I need to just make it very clear that this is a private meeting. Okay, this is not a public meeting. So everybody's had a private invitation here today, and you'll see why that's important today. Does anybody have an issue with this being a private meeting? I take it by your silence that we're all happy that it's a private meeting. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not a financial planner. I've got a lot of mates who are lawyers, and I've written a lot of contracts, so I've got a fair knowledge of it, but I'm noticing you now, I'm not a lawyer, not an accountant, although I've owned an accountancy firm, and I'm not a financial planner, although I've owned a financial planning firm. So I feel I have some knowledge there, but I'm letting you know that that's not what I'm here to do, is give you advice. Why would I want to add advice to anything? I'm also not here to offend anybody, although I normally do. So if you're a police officer, or a former police officer, or a lawyer, or a doctor, or a pharmacist, please, I'm letting you know now, I don't mean to offend you, but it's likely that I will. So I just want to run through a very quick disclaimer, if I can. No information provided here today or at any time through Truthology should be taken as fact. Now, I actually did that a couple of Wednesdays ago, and a young couple got up and walked out. Probably thinking, well, what am I doing here? But the reality is, my fact is my fact, or my knowledge is my knowledge. It's not yours. So what I'm going to run through today is my story, information that I've come across. And the reason I'm telling you that it's not to be taken as a fact is I want you to go out and spend as much or more time as I have studying this stuff. Okay, because we're coming out of the Piscean era, which is what the era of blind faith. You certainly shouldn't take as gospel anything that anybody says to you. You need to go and come across and make it your own truth. So this seminar is purely intellectual entertainment. Consider me an entertainer here today. I'm not going to sing and dance, but I want you to think of it that way. Make your own investigations. And I ask you, if you can, please, to preface everything I say, if I forget to, with I think or I believe. Everything I say today. I'll try as often as I can, but I can't actually be prosecuted for what I think or what I believe. So I can share that openly in this private meeting with you guys. But most of all, just have some fun and take on what feels to be true for you. I want to run through, I sit a meditation quite regularly called Vipassana, where you go and sit in your bum for 10 days and don't talk to anybody. There's enough voices in your head, let me tell you. But I want to tell it, the head teacher of that is Goenka G. He's a Burmese chap, and he's got some lovely little anecdotal stories that he tells throughout the 10 days. And one of them I want to run through now because I think it's quite important. It's about an Indian mother who wants to deliver a beautiful dish of keel to her little boy. And keel is a good quality milk dish with dried fruits and nuts and so forth that they cook up. And so the metaphor behind the story is that the mother wants to deliver a nourishing meal to the child. And so she serves up this bowl of keel, and the child pushes it aside and says, "No, I don't want it. I don't like it." And the mother says, "Hey, what's wrong?" And the little boy says, "It's not in my bowl. I want it in my bowl." "Oh, all right, give it back." So she dishes it up in his bowl and gives it back, and the little boy looks at it again and he goes, "No, I don't like it. I don't want it." And she goes, "Hey, what's wrong now?" And he says, "It has a black stone in it." And the mother says, "It's not a black stone. It's cardamom. One day, maybe when you grow up, you'll understand it's a delicious spice. But for now, just take it out. Now eat it." So the reason I'm telling you that story is that what Steph and Natasha and the rest of the Truthology team are wanting to do today is deliver you some nourishing information. But if it's not in your bowl, or there's a black stone in it, then just take the black stone out. Okay? But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, the reason I say that is sometimes I get an hour in and I might say something that offends somebody, and because I've studied a lot of body language, I'll get arms crossed and the head to the side, and they stop listening, and they rip themselves off for the rest of the day. So if you hear something you don't like, that's fine. Everybody's got different opinions. Just take out the black stone and push on. What I'd like you to do for today, and hopefully for the rest of your life, is to pretend that you're 4 years old again. Because what does a 4-year-old ask you all day long? Why? And you see, it's because we're not asking why, and the average Australian family is sitting in front of the Illuminati's master stroke called the television. They're sitting in front of that for 7 hours a day, not asking why. They're running around in the lives that they're living right now. So ask why about everything when you leave here today. Why am I registering my dog? Why do I have to tick all these boxes and fill in all these forms? Why? Okay, we'll run through the agenda for the day. We're going to run through a very quick background on myself. Look, there's nothing worse than going to a workshop and all they do is talk about themselves all day. But I think it's important you know who this crazy guy is up the front who's going to be talking to you all day. So I'll run through a little bit of a background on myself. And then we're going to look at challenging our beliefs. Just what I spoke about before is asking the question why and how we form the beliefs that have built the society that we're in now. Okay. Then I'm going to have a quick look at the world today, which I think from going around the room we all agree is in need of a bit of a tune-up and some repair. I'm going to talk very quickly about the history of the Illuminatis. I'm not going to dwell on this. I would urge you to Google it and find out for yourself. And it's a lot of the information you'll get is very fear-based. So it's, we can understand that they're there, but it's us about going forward and living how we wish to live. Then we're going to run through the very public side of life and the very private side of life, or what we call the public you and the private you. And for those hearing it for the first time, it can be pretty confronting information. Then we'll look at income tax and how you can actually operate very, very privately without being in the system through foundations, not-for-profit foundations. So if there's anyone from the ATO here, listen up. I've actually had somebody from the ATO attend one of my workshops about 18 months ago, and he sat in about the second or third row back. I used to do 2-day workshops, and he sat like this with his arms crossed for the whole of Saturday, and then about halfway through Sunday he got up and he had some interesting information that I'll share with you when we get to that time. But he essentially ratified everything that we talk about with foundations. Then we're going to look at the banking fraud. I'm an ex-bankster. You'll hear about that in a second, a reformed bankster. Then we're going to talk about handling debt honourably. We'll talk about honour and dishonour, and we'd always want to be honourable. Do we want people to be honourable in their dealings with us? Then that's what we're going to show you how to do with debt. And then we're going to talk about new community living. Okay, now our website doesn't talk a whole lot about that right now. And it's not necessarily tie-dyes, dope smoking and wife swapping, although if you want to do that in the Western Quarter, that's up to you. But we'll talk about new community living, which doesn't necessarily have to be geographically confined. Communities can be in opposite sides of the town, but they can catch up once a week and share information and products and goods. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll have group comments, and we're hoping that that's going to be between 4 and 4:30, and then we wind up at about 4:30. All right. So a little bit of a background on myself. Well, I guess everybody has their own idea of what this is, don't they? Success. And I used to do a bit of public speaking with motivation and wealth and so forth. And I think I had an idea when I was young that my success might look a little bit like this. A nice, easy series of steps leading me up to where I want to go. Yeah? That's a nice, shiny idea. Has anybody experienced that in life? I think success has looked a little bit like this for most of us in the room, hasn't it? A series of ups and downs. And I certainly know for myself that I've learnt more about myself at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're looking at yourself in the mirror going, how did this happen? How did I get here? So, look, I was born in Canada in 1967 and moved out here in 75. So how old was I? I was about 8. We were brought up in a very strict household. I was dealt discipline and love out with the back of a hand, and sometimes without notice. And I'm not here to be a victim, but certainly I think when you're first born, your parents are God, aren't they? They feed you, they house you, they are God. And then as you grow up, you start to see their own infallibilities, and so you then start to hopefully question authority. And I certainly had some learnings along the way there, and which is probably why all my life I've questioned authority. And we're going to break words down today. Just start looking at what authority is. It's to author something, isn't it? Just because somebody writes something doesn't make it so. It's just their authoring of something. So I went to BBC here in Brisbane Boys College, which was a very strict school, had its own set of beliefs. And my father was a hard-working, ended up being very successful businessman, and had a lot of beliefs around money and status that he drove into me. And they're sometimes hard to get rid of. But my father's whole idea of success was money and status. And I don't know how well it worked out for him. He died at 60 with pancreatic cancer, which is carrying frustration and anger. And certainly on his deathbed had a lot of remorse about the life that he had lived. But he certainly taught me to be an entrepreneur from a young age. And so at the age of 11, I started pushing a lawnmower that was about this big to me and delivering the milk. Remember when cow secretion used to get delivered to your door? So I used to deliver the milk, and then I got a job at a newspaper that's no longer existing called the Sunday Sun newspaper here in Brisbane. And on a Friday and Saturday night, when my mates were all out kissing the girls, I was loading the trucks with the piles of 50 papers till about 5 or 6 in the morning. And my father read, Richest Man in Babylon? I think he read it upside down, because I had to bank 70% and I got to save, I had to bank 70% and spend 30%. So, but that was exciting. Every time I got $100, I'd go down to Westpac and get my certificate in a term deposit, and had a whole roll of these. And left school in 1984 with about $13,800 in the bank. So if you extrapolate that out now to today's terms, it's probably $30,000 or $40,000. And so therein was a lot of programming on money and success that I had from an early age. So left school, went to university, dropped out of university because I was sick of being told what to do and how to think, and thought I want to go and earn some money. So I went and became a chef, and I loved being a chef. I loved working in teams, and ended up being an agency chef where I worked in different restaurants, cooked for the Prime Minister, did all sorts of crazy things in Sydney, and then got an opportunity in 1988 here to open a restaurant. So does anybody remember what happened in Brisbane in 1988? Expo 88. And so I opened it up 6 months before Expo. It was a 140-seat restaurant, only 20-odd years of age, and it went gangbusters. So that was certainly one of these times for me. And then unfortunately, when Expo started, excuse me, all the restaurants around Brisbane just died, and it was a mystery. I drove around to the other restaurants, and they're all out the front with their arms crossed. Everybody that came ate at Expo, so Expo was like its own little city. And so I lost the restaurant. Didn't have any capital to ride that out. So I guess that was one of my first little down cycles here of not feeling so successful. But I was very lucky in that there was a couple of guys from LJ Hooker that we used to eat in the restaurant all the time. And because I can talk a bit, as you'll find out today, probably sick of hearing me by the end of the day, they said, you should be in real estate. And so off I went. I think most people in their life have done hospitality or real estate, haven't they, somewhere along the line? But in the late 80s in Brisbane was a very busy time in real estate. And I made a lot of money. I learnt a lot about business and contracts and people. But then unfortunately, does anybody else remember what happened in the late 80s with the recession we had to have? And does anybody in the room remember those times? Ouch. Let me ask you, how would we be today if interest rates went to 19, 20 or 20% or even 13%? It would absolutely floor things. So business went from being absolutely booming to busting literally in a week. You know, I remember selling 9 properties in a weekend, and then 3 weekends later, the other guys in the office were sitting around playing poker. No phones ringing, nothing. And I think, and we've got a few clients who are in real estate now, and I think most areas have experienced something like that recently. So I got out of real estate, and I was, again, luckily enough, I'd sold a few dockside apartments to Warren Jones, who was Alan Bond's right-hand man at the time. And he gave me a job with Bond Media. And so if you go to a 4- and 5-star hotel now, they've got the Movie Link system. So we bought that in. That was another great opportunity for a young bloke at the time. But Alan was out too busy spending money on paintings, and there was absolutely no business sense whatsoever in the Bond empire. We got to spend and do whatever we wanted. And so the Bond empire crashed, which wasn't so good for me because I thought I was set for life. But from there, I mulled around and did a few things. I went into A.B. Jennings eventually, the proud old builder, and got a very good understanding of finance from there. And so most people think that Jennings and all those home builders are home builders. Yes, they might do that, but essentially I see them as finance companies. I was out at Narellan, which is near Campbelltown in Sydney, and essentially if we could get a young couple to finance, they would buy an A.B. Jennings home. So from there I got taken across to, I'm not going to mention the name, but it was one of the biggest lenders now in Australia. It was a fledgling company at the time. And it was a very exciting time to be with that company because they originally came out bagging the banks, so you probably all know who I'm talking about anyway. And interestingly enough, now they're a broker for all the banks. But so it was a time when the company was just starting out, and when I left, it was a household name in Australia. So I learnt a lot about fast-growing companies. So I left there, and then I went into wealth creation. So I apologise for being a promoter of capitalism in the past. That's a nervous laugh because you know, I'd be nervous to run into some of my clients now that are to the eye teeth in debt. But I went out and started a wealth creation company And it went another one of these times in my life, I guess. It just went gangbusters. Got sent a truckload of business. So we had 4 divisions. We did accounting, finance, financial planning, and property. And we would sit down with clients and very ethically, I felt at the time, sit down and show them how by budgeting and by leveraging and borrowing lots of money and through tax breaks, they could push forward and become one of the elite 2 or 3% in society. That business I sold my shareholding in 2000 and effectively just took it easy. I moved back up to the Gold Coast, bought a waterfront home and a motorbike and boats and all the toys, and I got sick of that pretty quickly. So my partner at the time had a business that bought out. Does anybody remember bath bombs? About 10 years ago? That was us. Crazy idea that just seemed to go very, very well. And we eventually got that into Coles and Woolies. I don't know how we did that, but we did. Then we went into the manufacturing, went overseas. It just went nuts. Definitely one of these times. And we ended up with a factory with about 50 staff, and you could smell us for 5 kilometres away because we used all the aromatherapy oils and so forth. And then, being the crazy creator that I am, at 2 o'clock in the morning I woke up and I thought, we had the daughter coming home 4 times a year, with the chocolates, the fundraising chocolates. And I thought, wow, with obesity running rife and teeth falling out and so forth, it seems a crazy idea that we're pushing these chocolates as a fundraiser in schools. So I came up with a huge bath bomb in the shape of like a Toblerone, and we called it not a chocker bomber blocker, like a lollygobble bliss bomb. And so we promoted that into the schools. We had Grant Hackett, who can get up and down the pool okay, as our ambassador. And we started what I've had since as a long-standing relationship with Kids Helpline. So every time the school sold one of these fundraising boxes, money went to Kids Helpline. And we were so busy supplying the supermarkets at the time that somebody suggested we franchise. So we did that. We set up some distributorships. And for anybody who's in business will know that selling 14 franchises in 3 or 4 months is way too many. And we didn't manage the growth too well. So the business went from being a multi-million-dollar business to totally imploding inside 6 months. Totally imploding. And it was one of the toughest times in my life. And I'll be honest, there's a couple of times there I thought, time for me to check out. Because my status and all my money just disappeared. I didn't go bankrupt, but there was definitely some times there where I had to have a good, long, hard look at myself, and there was ego and all sorts of stuff involved. So yeah, that business just totally disintegrated because we sold a franchise to a couple of people that we shouldn't have. Very young in business. Had too many of these times. I don't know if anybody's experienced that. I felt like the golden-haired boy. Everything I touched turned to gold other than the restaurant. And so when that business went down, I really started to learn about myself. Does anybody identify with that, having a business go down or being controlled that much by money and status that you can fall into depression? So in my public speaking days as a wealth coach, this is one of the screens I used to put up. And I got the idea, to be honest, from a guy by the name of Roger Hamilton, who heads up the Excel Group, which is a group of entrepreneurs to learn how to make more money to give back. Great idea. But isn't it funny how sometimes we teach what we need to learn? Yeah? And I used to sit down with my clients and go, do you want to be a pilot or do you want to be a passenger? And most people don't even know there's a plane. But do you want to be the pilot or do you want to be the passenger? And if you want to be a pilot, how does your cockpit look? Because it's not all about money. I was doing a joint promotion at a resort called Gwingana, which is down on the Gold Coast. And I was sitting with Sharon Colker, the general manager. And as I'm chatting away with her, I can see out of the corner of my eye there was a chap sitting at a few tables away. He was a big guy with a beard, and he had his hands like this, and there was just tears running down onto the table. And I said to Sharon, I think you've got a bit of an issue over here. And she sort of had a look and went, She said, did you see the big Bentley on the way in? I said, well, you couldn't miss it. It's a $650,000 brick on wheels. She said, look, he owns all these supermarkets and land and superannuation companies, all this sort of stuff. He's mega wealthy, but he's been here for 3 months. Now, mostly when you go to Gwingana, it's for 5 or 7 day packages. He's been there for 3 months. And she said 4 or 5 months ago, he had a heart attack. His wife left him, and he had no idea who his teenage kids were. Just so busy building his empire that this is the state that he found himself in. So isn't that a big lesson for us all, is to really look at, and these dials, I apologise, these are from my wealth creation days. They don't even apply to Steph and I anymore. You need to come up with whatever the dials are for you. But it's important that they're all looking healthy, because in a plane, only one of them needs to be not so good and the plane's going to crash, isn't it? So just keep your eye on where you're going. When my business went down, I then went back into what I knew best, which was wealth creation, and started a company on the Gold Coast, and again started sending lots of money to Kids Helpline, which we've been involved with for a long time. And that business was really starting to grow, and I met a guy by the name of Peter Duff. Does anybody remember Peter Duff or know Peter Duff? I went and saw Peter, must be almost 2 years ago, and I can't believe I forgot this, but it's why I'm here today. He changed my life. I did a one-day workshop with him, and he shared a lot of the information I'm going to share with you today about the public you and the private you and a few other things with the banking industry. And I have to say, I felt, which some of you might today who are hearing it for the first time, an element of excitement, but also this huge heaviness of the illusion that I'd been living in and peddling. And I eventually, within 2 or 3 weeks, had to walk away from, I was the majority shareholder in the financial planning business, I had to walk away from it. I could no longer put my fellow man into debt and servitude and push the whole capitalism lie. So I just wanted to, at this point, thank Peter Duff and let you know why the transition was from going from a filthy capitalist to doing what I do today. I went, probably for about 2 or 3 months, I went into pretty deep depression. I was doing lots of research and attending seminars, like with Mark Patelik and a few other people, driving all over the country and flying around the place to attend workshops and educate myself, and really had to stop looking at all the things that these Illuminatis and so forth are doing. And looking now at more solutions-based information. But I know that a lot of the clients that even attend our workshop for a few weeks afterwards do the research and can go through that low patch, and maybe that's necessary, because through pain comes motivation to do other things. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, yeah? One of my critical learning moments was when the business had gone down and I had no idea who I was or what I was going to do. I was up one night watching Compass on the ABC, and this guy came on. His name's Alain de Botton. He's a modern-day philosopher, and he had a series that you can actually, I believe, still get from the ABC shop, and it's a book. The book's hard-going, but the DVD's good, called Status Anxiety. And it was so prudent that I got to watch it that night, so I tore down to the ABC shop and went and bought it, and I've watched it many times, as have many of our clients. And Alain talks about how a few hundred years ago we lived in, the world was an aristocracy. Okay? You understand how an aristocracy works. You were either born through the feudal lines into money, or you weren't. And none the twine did mix. So does everybody understand how aristocracies used to work? So what they discovered back then was that the people that were tilling the soil and tending the rich people's homes and so forth had a strong sense of community. They ate and prayed and meditated together. And because they had no expectations of ever having all of this money and status, they were actually quite happy. They were happy beings. And then along came America, and on the 1776, they stood on the White House lawn and said, "Come ye all to America, the land of opportunity," didn't they? And they created then the world that we live in today, which is known as a meritocracy. Well, I call it a corporatocracy, but we'll talk about that a bit later. But it's a meritocracy, which means on the merit of your hard work and labour, you can be, do and have anything you like. I've been to so many be, do and have motivational workshops. And I'm here to tell you I think it's a myth, and I think it's the reason that the world's in a whole lot of trouble at the moment. And as an ex-wealth coach, I would always sit with my clients and say, do you want to be in the top 2 or 3%, in the elite? So what was I promoting? What was I promoting? But he's got a fantastic, look, the DVD series is awesome. It runs into a lot of advertising, how we're very, very prone to what watch we wear, where our kids go to school, you know, being dictated to by the world around us. And he's got a fantastic formula that he calls the self-esteem formula. So it's self-esteem equals achievement over expectation. So if the expectation of you looking like Jennifer Aniston or Brad Pitt or having all this money or whatever it is that you believe is a perfect 10, the expectation, yet the world that you're living in and the world that's shining back to you is only ever a 4 or a 5 or a 6, how's that fraction looking for you? So where most people are living in this sense of emptiness, always wanting more, always wanting more. So if you've got time and you've got I think it's $29, shoot down the ABC shop. It's a real eye-opener, that DVD. And it's funny, I used to even give it to some of my clients when I went back into wealth creation, and I kind of knew the ones that would like it and the ones that wouldn't. Here's a really interesting guy who's part of the reason I'm still standing before you today, I believe, because at the end of the business going down and a very toxic relationship and 12 hours a day with a little mini microphone on the side of my head trying to make money, I was diagnosed with a brain tumour. And I was told that unless they cut, burn and zap, 18 months, I'd be all over Red Rover. And if anybody's been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, it can send you into a lot of fear. And so for a little while there, I thought, well, this is something I can drink my way out of. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy, was my favourite line at the time. But a few long walks on the beach, I sort of realised that that's not the way forward for me. And I've got 3 kids. The oldest is 20. And I've delivered a couple of them at home. And so for a long time, I've always had an understanding of self-responsibility and self-awareness and the whole immunisation debate and pharmacy debate and so forth. And so for me, when these so-called experts were telling me that it's time to cut, burn and zap for me to live, it was conflicting with a lot of my beliefs. But I eventually bit the bullet, and as I said before, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. I met this guy here. Has anybody heard of Don Tolman? I went and saw Don speak, and it was just one of those massive aha moments where everything he said, and Don's words are truest truth. Everything he said to me was truest truth. And so Don talks about the whole pharmaceutical debate, which pharma is toxins. You know, start breaking the words down. And so it's the delivery of toxins, which is what the pharmaceutical industry does. And he talks about the signature of food. But let's talk about the pharmacy side first. He's got a great little story that he says. He talks the brain coming down to the body Bob. He calls the body Bob. He's American. He's a big Texan, loud-speaking guy, if anyone's seen him speak. And, you know, he talks about how we want a quick fix for everything. We want a pill for everything because we're so busy getting on with busyness, that we can't have time out. So he talks about this little guy's running along and all of a sudden, he feels like he needs to be sick. He wants to vomit. But that doesn't fit in because he's on his way to a meeting. So he tears off to the pharmacy for some toxic substance that's called an anti-nausea tablet to stop him being sick. So he takes it. There we go. So he's all better off to his meeting. And the brain comes down to the body Bob and goes, Bob, what happened? There was something in there that was no good. We tried to get it out. Well, I don't know, boss. You know, I tried to get it out at the front door and we're stuck with it. So, of course, this little guy a couple of days later is going to get diarrhea. Diarrhea. There we go. It's a big word. No one likes to talk about that stuff, do they? He gets diarrhea. So the body's trying to get something out now the back door. No. I've got another meeting to go to, so I go and take some anti-diarrhea tablets. Back up inside we go. And then it might come out through the skin, the biggest organ that we have. Okay? And then, you know, it might come into your chest. Oh, we don't want that. Off we go to get some more toxins, some anti-congestion tablets. And so the brains continually come down and going, Bob, what's happening? He says, I don't know, boss. We tried to get out the front door, tried to get out the back door, tried to get it out through the skin. You know, we tried to get it through the lungs. We just can't seem to get it out. So, of course, the body wants to heal. If anybody hasn't studied this stuff, the body is a perfect organism, and it wants to heal and it wants to live. So what does the body do? If it tries to get it out through every orifice possible, it builds a little house or it builds a little trash can, and it's called a tumour. And so it puts all the junk in there because it wants to live. It doesn't want to poison the whole body. And then you go and get diagnosed with it, and they want to cut, burn, and zap. And as soon as they cut, burn, and zap, it starts a whole other chain of events. And it's funny, he says, you know, they cut it out for this poor chap, and the brain comes down and he goes, Bob, where's the trash can? He goes, I don't know, boss. Someone came in the middle of the night and stole it, but I think they're on drugs because there's drugs everywhere. So he's a really interesting guy to go and listen to. He will also talk to you about the signature of food. And today we're going to start breaking down a few words so that you can see the true meaning of them. This is one of the good ones, though. What is that if you break it down? Sign of nature. Sign of nature. So he'll talk about a tomato or a capsicum. They're both red and have 4 chambers, don't they? What's got red and 4 chambers? So what do you think tomatoes and capsicums are good for? What about a walnut? It's got a hard case. You crack the hard case open and what's it look like? Actually, it looks like the right and left hemisphere of your brain. They're actually having amazing results with Alzheimer's and a whole heap of other things by feeding them just 100 grams of walnuts a day. Right? Bananas and zucchinis. What do you think they might be good for? Boys? Kidney beans. You know, I love the way Don says, I don't know, I took a drive down around, didn't see any Pizza Hut trees. So Don breaks the body into the lower third, the middle third, and the upper third. And he says things that grow below the ground are good for here, things that grow on the ground or thereabouts are good for here, and things you need to reach up into the heavens for are good for your brain. So simple. So simple. So it doesn't matter what your faith is, whether you believe in God or not. The universe has provided you everything you need. One of Don's favourite lines that I like to use is he says, if you need to be reading the ingredients, you probably shouldn't be eating it. Everything you have is there and it can be eaten fresh. So Don will teach you about self-care and self-responsibility, and that's a lot about what we're going to talk about today. Now, why am I telling you all this? Is not to tell you... Okay, so by the way, I went strictly vegetarian for 12 months. I rid myself of a toxic relationship. I started to exercise. I used to be 110 kilos. I'm now 95. And I actually took responsibility for why I got there. Okay, and now I'm completely healthy. So the reason I'm telling you that is for everybody to understand how powerful you are. You don't need to give your power away to these so-called experts who I believe have ulterior motives. So there we go. That's what we're going to talk about for the majority of today, is to not feel like a victim, to not feel like you're being pursued by the system, because there are ways out. And you need to be able to demonstrate that to yourself.